I'm here with Robin Houlihan from Foundation Source, and this is part 2 in our series on building a foundation. In part 1, we looked at the internal work and planning that was necessary. In this one, we're going to start looking at the relationships and kind of the outward-facing elements that are part of a foundation. So, Robin, where do we go from here? What's next in our building phase?
Let's talk about the next set of important factors in building a successful foundation. That includes program goals and implementation, budget, and determining impact. From this point forward, Peter, building relationships is key to our conversation. For example, as we discussed earlier, when foundations are learning the issues, that includes meeting with knowledgeable leaders and individuals in the field. But after learning the material, foundations typically sit back and say, okay, I think we know the problem. Now what? So this is the moment for the foundations to establish their program goals. They need to decide how to put those goals into action to solve the problem that they identified. So in the same way that I suggested earlier that a foundation learn the problem and the issues, consider how the foundation is going to solve the problem by listening to and convening stakeholders, both internally and external to the foundation.
So as the foundation starts to get their arms wrapped around this, I can imagine it can be daunting because the issue might be quite large. How do they bring it to scale? How do they start in an incremental way?
Exactly. Well, budget plays a key role here. So not only do you need to know how much is available in the foundation's budget to solve the problem, you need to hear from the field to understand how much is needed to be able to make that successful. Quite often, those two numbers don't match. It's at this time that foundations look back and say, oh my goodness, this problem is too large. It's too broad in geographic scope. It's too complex for one foundation to handle. But I would say don't lose heart here. Defining a foundation's program goals means narrowing down to tangible, successful outcomes that are going to fit your budget. So to get there, consider joining forces with like-minded donors or addressing a small niche that no one else is addressing, but it takes you one step closer to getting a positive outcome. Or take on a bite-sized local solution to a larger geographic problem.
Yeah, so what you're really describing is very actionable goals, making sure that they're smart goals in a way.
Yes. Exactly. By learning the issues early on, a foundation is also learning where and how to support, whether it's through grant making or other charitable means. And it's always about turning to those relationships that one is building on issue areas to find the organization and the individuals that are making headway to solve the problem. And they also have a mission and methods that really fit with the program goals of the foundation. So it's also important to note here that foundations want to get it overnight. They want to have it all figured out. It is super important to be patient, understand that it takes time and relationship building to be able to solve some really complicated problems. It's also important, as we have witnessed firsthand, all of us in this world, that things happen to change the priorities of organizations and foundations, and it happens quite suddenly. It could be a natural disaster. It could be an economic downturn. It could be a health crisis. These are the things that change an organization's priorities, and a foundation needs to be responsive overnight. So the key is have those strong relationships with grantees in the community so that the foundation can be responsive in real time.
Wow. And so that impact over time, how does a foundation know it's successful? I would imagine measuring impact becomes a thorny issue.
Yeah, determining success depends on those goals that you set from the start. So success is a measure of expectations, right? And foundations vary greatly on how they're going to measure their outcomes. That can range from a thank you letter from school children to an elaborate study of quantitative and qualitative data. So the key here is to articulate early on what you want to achieve, establish how you're going to get there, and be on the same page with your philanthropic partners so that your expectations are the same. So this starts, of course, as I mentioned in the beginning of our conversation, with open and trusting relationships that the foundation is building with its program recipients.
It's very interesting. Part one was clarity of purpose. Part two is really about clarity of expectations and building strong relationships and trust.
Exactly.
Thank you, Robin. Thank you for your time today. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.